Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Roundtable Talk Show where the masks come off and excuses get left at the door. I am your host, Christopher Jones. Of course, I do have a lovely and vibrant crew that rocks with me all the time. My co-host Perry Busby is on with me currently. Dr. Catherine Campbell is more than likely to chip into space, as well as our new co-host, Dustin Harris. Of course, he's been here for a while, but he's still newly adopted as a co-host to the Roundtable Talk Show. And again, like I said, welcome, welcome everybody. Um, this Tuesday we're gonna definitely try to, um, you know, we're gonna definitely try to be on point with everybody. We know we got a lot of things happening in society, let alone within our own homes and communities. But let's start with this. You don't do politics, right? Then you don't cry. Then don't cry when your water's off, your rent's tripled, your child gets criminalized for just existing, and your mayor ain't answering your call. You don't do politics, but every you don't do politics, but every damn time and everything about your life is being voted on without you. Make that make sense. And when the lights go out or the bullets fly, y'all start whispering about where's the elders. But the youth ain't never met the elders. Make that make sense. Um, and that's because we never introduced them. We, as the middle group, never introduced our future to our past, and they all are living. They are living futures and living pasts and living presents. And you know, we're too busy surviving or too busy running around doing our own thing. But tonight, we're not just unpacking who did it to us, who did it to the group, or who did it to a particular people. Um, we're not just unpacking. We're not just unpacking that. We're addressing how we've been holding the bag, staying silent, or worse, repeating the same cycle that many of the deceased elders have laced us up about or alluded to in just normal conversations or around the foot conversations, right? So here's your trigger warning. If you're afraid of truth, if you're going to hate this show, do it. You're going to hate it because truth tonight is definitely going to be spoken into power. And again, I definitely welcome each and every one of the listeners and the watchers for the Roundtable Talk Show. Um, as you know, we do have our national topic, our state topics, and our local topics, and we try to give references and resources for everybody to go back through and enlighten themselves, talk about around their own tables. Our national topic for this week is Jim Crow is not dead. He just moved into. Nah, let me stop. Jim Crow is not dead is our national topic. Jim Crow rewritten, actually. The system did not die, it got smarter. Why Reconstruction failed, how modern policies keeps the gate shut, and why history keeps repeating itself. What we're going to be digging into is we were promised repair and access. Instead, we got surveillance, loopholes, and redistricting. This segment rips the mask off of modern systems that still operate on 1865 foundations. Raw talking points that you can have at your table is 40 acres and a mule never came, mass incarcerations did. School resegregation and digital redlining in progress. Progressive cities across America. Voter suppression by algorithm, not by dogs and horses. And how policy language use neutrality to hide deliberate harm. Our roundtable question for our co-host is: how can we build a future if we keep pretending the system was never meant to include us? Seeds for Solutions is community-wide tech teach-ins on local reconstruction and Jim Crow legacies. That's like, again, sitting around the foot of some of our elders. Push for public policy audits, show racial impact before passing laws. Fund independent history projects that teach what textbooks hide. Our sources for this particular topic comes from Equal Justice Initiative, which is eji.org. Reconstruction in America, Racial Violence After the Civil War is where we're pulling some references from, as well as one of my favorite, Brookings.com or Brookings.edu, and that is on the Jim Crow by Another Name. Um, so, like I said, the roundtable question is: how can we build a future if we keep pretending the system was never meant to include us? Perry, like I said, I'm sure Dr. Campbell and Dustin will probably hop on here shortly, but it's a pleasure to have you on this week, brother. Give us a little insight of what that question or your response to that particular question.
First of all, again, thank you for creating this platform and this place for discussion. And hello to the round table listening crew who join us and who've been encouraging these discussions and encouraging us to dig even deeper.
Yes, indeed.
Regarding this question, and I'm glad you asked it because, again, I think it puts us into this moment where uh, elder uh, advice and leadership is crucial. Uh, One, we know that it's needed. I think what we have now is uh, there are plenty lessons that Jim Crow can teach us in terms of our resiliency, in terms of our ability to uh, create foundations when we were left in really nothing but the mud and the swamp, and somehow we found the ingenuity that, if we could just get this mud to sit out in the sun and we could form it and shape it, that somehow we could make bricks or, or clay from that and begin to help build what is the foundation of our communities.
Yeah.
And I just think that we're at that point again. Uh, this time, again, I think just like it was coming out of slavery, where there was the hope and the expectation, and now that it's here, the essential question is, okay, what steps do I make now? And we can go back to Reconstruction and see that they really only had 12 years in which to try to get some sort of agency, because right then that led right into the slave law. I mean, to the vagrancy laws, which became the predecessor to Jim Crow. And so we find ourselves again with this slow step toward another uh, way in which the system, which tries to entangle us. And I think again that the best lessons we can learn from our elders is the honest truth.
Mm,
Some of which may include I don't know.
right.
And I think I don't know is a good answer for some elders even to admit, rather than to lead us down some, you know, some questionable roads. And so and especially in this digital age, I think more so than ever as elders, that puts us in this uncomfortable position, because we know some plans, but those plans apply to another time, another place, but the principles remain. And so how
Hmm.
do we extract those fundamental principles uh, while also giving birth uh, to a new approach, to a new legacy? And so so we can ill afford at this time uh, a generational miscommunication to continue, is what I say. I mean, at this time it's pivotal that we address the breach in our intergenerational communication within our communities, and and really address the the fact that we've been playing tug of war in a visionless fight, is the best I can say it. We're fighting for leadership, but neither side has really given birth to a vision that the people can accept. It's just been this back and forth. The old head saying, we waiting on these youngsters, they got to prove themselves. And the youngsters saying, we tired of this mess. You guys hadn't done anything. Both can be true, but the people need a vision
I
at
totally
the end
agree.
of the day.
I totally agree. And like you said, regardless to the age and or socioeconomic status, people want to know where they're going and how they're gonna get there.
Right.
They don't need to know what it's gonna look like. They just need
Right.
to know how and where. You know what I'm saying? And so um, I definitely want us to stop acting shocked. Jim Crow did not leave. This brother got a corner office, and mind you, Jim Crow, although we say it's the laws have been removed, it's a mindset that we still have to deal with, right?
Right.
And so that's why in my response to this question, I give Jim Crow a persona, right? I give
Hmm.
him what they call it. He's well, they are non-binary. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? So Jim Crow didn't leave. They got a corner office. They're working zoning laws in our cities right now. They have the face of those neutral school board banning books, banning black books, and rewriting history to make white folks feel safe. This country is good at theater, you all. and they give you black mayors while stripping black budgets. They hire DEI. They hire a DEI eradicator director while funding surveillance teach uh, uh, tech training on our faces. This is not progress. This is performance. And there's a part that burns a lot of us. Um, a lot of us is helping them because just like Perry mentioned, we are so disconnected, and they intentionally want that. They want that. They want the disconnect. They want the disengagement from our past, our present, and our future. Um, and a lot, like I said, a lot of us are helping them because we're too busy being flattered by access to realize we still don't have power, and that's again not only in our own homes but in our communities at large. Um, where's Jim Crow hiding in plain sight in our city? Where? How do we keep mistaking diversity for real justice? Those are some of the questions that, as I was doing the research on this particular topic, and like I said, I try to give some reasonable sources of knowledge, right, for individuals to read up on. And so that those are some of the questions as I was going through my research. Um, is Where is Jim Crow hiding in plain sight in our city? How do we keep mistaking diversity for real justice? Again, Equal Justice Initiative, the Brennan Center, Brookings, any website you could possibly think of, or Google search engine rather, you could possibly think of and ask them about the new face of Jim Crow, it'll tell you. And I want our community to realize that you're not free just because they let you in the building. If you can't change the system from the inside, you're not the breakthrough that we're needing, right? And I heard Perry say, putting people in position so that they, on the inside of the system, can disrupt the system. And most of those individuals that are there currently, they're not there to interrupt. They're just they're just the buffer. Um, let's stop confusing visibility with victory. Power changes policy, not photo ops, y'all. Power, people power at that changes policy. And just like we have the Civil Rights Act of 1965, those two came with power, people power that pushed policy and people policy. And until our community gets our act together, Jim Crow might end up wearing your clothes. Our second topic, our second topic, man, is definitely hitting here in the state of Texas again, because our crew thought it needed to be um, thorough. This discussion on a state level, especially when we're talking about our water security here in the state of Texas, and in other places across the nation. You might want to huddle up and listen to some of the issues we're going through here in Texas so you could have, I guess, like access to the best practice of how we're going to fight this thing, right? So our state topic for the state of Texas is you thought it was about land, it's about water. And they're already bottling it up without you. Part two. How private corporations, state deals, and climate chaos are turning Texas's water into profit, not protection. What we're gonna definitely dig into for this particular topic is that it isn't a drought only that we have to worry about. It's a buyout. And if you, let's side topic. If you live in the state of Texas and you're dealing with these termites that's flying right now, please turn your light out. Of course, I can't because I'm on the show. But I'm tapping termites that's crawling on me. As y'all can see, I look like all fidgety and stuff. But yeah, that's what's going on here. That's what's going on. I'm okay, but it's them termites. But this isn't a drought. It's a buyout. And if you think it stops at the faucet, think again. Water is being secured by industries, not municipalities and communities. This is the front line of environmental and economic warfare. Um, our raw talking points that you can have at your table is Texas has quietly approved multiple private water access contracts, especially around aquifers. Beaumont is fed from an aquifer, and many other Texas cities and municipalities are fed by aquifers, and those are underground aquifers. And so everybody's not getting water from rivers and stuff like that. Beaumont also receives water from the river. So we got two sources of water here for supplies here in the city of Beaumont. You better stop gnawing on me. You better get her. You better get her. um, Desalinization projects are being fast tracked with minimal environmental justice review and or impact studies. Municipal leaders are municipal leaders are promoting, choice and progress, but not telling us who profits. Our roundtable question for this particular topic is: if water becomes a private commodity, who's left out when they set the price? Our seeds of solutions are past local water equity policies that block privatization and essential utilities, expose and map who owns what rights in Texas's groundwater districts, and support neighborhood-led water monitoring coalitions. Our sources for these particular topics are Texas Living comes from Texas Living Water, Living Waters with an S.org. And they're definitely a good viable website um, for all of Texas water projects that are happening, as well as the Circle of Blue.org website. And their information has a wealth of knowledge about nationwide water and what's going on across the globe. So you might want to check that out as well, because again, we do live on a circle of blue. Um, so our roundtable question, just to jump back to that for our co-host, is: if water becomes a private commodity, who's left footing the bill? Pretty much, who's left footing the bill when they set the price? It's just us, unless somebody in the background. Let me see, because I know we did get a text message. Okay, so I got a text message from Dr. Campbell asking us to keep her in prayer as she is in dire pain. And so, again, just keep Dr. Campbell in prayer as um, she's enduring some pain in her lower back. So pray for that, y'all. Pray for her, and yeah.
Yes, indeed. Uh, Chris, I know Dr. Campbell was looking forward to this discussion, and I pray her health continues to keep her. Um, and I know that she was quite interested in this. Um,
Yes, indeed.
I knew a little about desalination and what you were uh, and what you have been uh, enlightening us on, in the past several months. Um, and I must admit, like I said, water processing is something that, for many of us, it's just something that happens. There's some level of trust that you hope that, you know that that your municipality is uh, doing the things that it should. Although, of course, in Florida they're taking fluoride out of the water, but this goes to a deeper level in just the water
Hmm.
itself. And it reminded me, there's last week we were talking about art imitating life and life imitating art. Uh, there was this show with Billy Bob Thornton on a couple of years ago called oh gosh, Goliath, and he's a lawyer fighting against just really public corruption. And one of the series that they did was on water rights in California, because as this whole almond industry began to take off, and we getting almond milk and almond everything, and roasted almonds, and but almonds are require a lot of water
Yes, sir.
in order to produce. And just to hear about some of the many water rights that have gone on, not just intrastate but
Hmm.
interstate. There were people who were who are saying in Nevada that California is tapping into their water resources. So this goes real deep in terms of industry needing, uh, its potable water and brine that it needs for its mass production. And that's why desalination becomes very important in terms of the process, and then the throw off of the minerals in terms of how to reproduce it. So it's not just, and understand it's not just the industry itself, it's the other supporting industries that, that become vital to this process, in addition to, and I was thinking about it, as AI begins to grow, one of the things that AI needs is definitely those cooling plants and everything that go along with it. And so, we when you look at that and you look at most of these data centers, we're finding out that they are in heavy industrial
Hmm.
areas. And so, with the carbon emissions, along with everything else, we know who's right next door to the industrial areas. We don't need to wonder if that's Miss Becky and Goodwill over there. We know that there's Hoppin' John and everybody else
Yeah,
over
yeah.
there. And so it behooves us to begin to look at alternative methods of refining and delivering sources that are now uh, in the middle of a free fall. I mean, even though the world is what they said, world is what is it 3/5 water, or is it 2/3 water? But yet here we are, due to climate change, that water now is slowly becoming a commodity. And you're right. I mean, if we're not careful, not only will we be priced out individually, we'll find ourselves as communities. Uh, in addition to being food deserts, just being in drought, in plains filled with drought. Uh, you know, and dust. So yeah, so I appreciate you for bringing this to the forefront and having us even think about it and begin to engage in this
It's much
conversation.
needed. Much needed.
Uh, you know, yeah.
Much needed. Let's run to our comments right fast. Good evening, Miss Lillian. Thanks for always tuning in. I appreciate you, Queen. Three Camp Cat. Three Camp Cat say, open it all the way. Taxpayers, of course. He was responding to our question. And the last comment he said, what we need is a plan to move forward. The municipality focuses on the small pieces publicly, but large things like this go unspoken of while they continue to charge us, the taxpayers, heavily. And you're absolutely correct, sir. Um, Especially Beaumont, being that Beaumont is a water provider, not only to us as residents, but other municipalities around it and industries. Um, it would behoove the city of Beaumont to advance its current processes for making potable water, right? That can be treated.
Hmm.
And so, Mr. Three Camp Cat, you're absolutely correct. Many of our elected want to sort of kind of put the buggy before, and we don't even have a horse. So that's the crazy part about it. I mean, I hear candidates and the elected here in the city of Beaumont, in particular, because that's where I live, say, "Oh well, we need a bustling downtown," but everywhere else is crippled. Everywhere else is crumbling, and so I don't believe that a downtown grows its city. I believe that a growing city grows its downtown. And that only comes with
Exactly.
individuals having true access to all resources that their area provides, as well as access to their elected officials and appointed individuals as well to bring these ideas and or concerns to the table for discussion and then be able to use best practices to say, hey, this is what like Perry said, this is what California is doing, this is what Arizona has done, this is what Beaumont should do, this is what New York is doing, especially being that New York receives its from where they receive their water in order to process, right? And so we're looking at San Antonio propping themselves. I'm not sure if the city prioritized or privatized, rather privatized its water processing. Um, but I don't think the city of Beaumont has too much longer to sit on this egg before we really have to become a parent to whatever we settle. And so yeah, Texas is not in a water crisis. We're in a morality crisis, if you ask me. The state has figured out how to
Hmm.
turn uh, thirst into profit. While communities are boiling water in 2025 like it's the 1800s, Developers and corporate contractors are fast tracking desalination deals with your tax dollars, state tax dollars. No community consent, none from your municipal area, whether they selling water as a revenue or whatever, it doesn't matter. No community consent. They didn't ask you, knock on your door as a neighbor, a resident, or a Texan if we could sell water to, let's say, Tesla that's growing in Texas, or let's say SpaceX that's growing in Texas, um, or any other industry, that's growing in Texas. Um, no environmental protections. Again, like I mentioned earlier, no environmental impact studies. No, none of that. Right? Build it and they'll come. Is the sentiment here in the state of Texas. We're still dealing with busted pipes and pay 200 plus,
Yeah,
two
in
hundred and
fact,
fifty dollar plus water bills. Go ahead, brother. What you were saying?
somehow I didn't lost that.
Okay. So we're still dealing with busted pipes and a $250 water bill while they're bottling up our future and selling it to the highest bidder. And they call it smart growth or infrastructural expansion. But it's just corporate theft in in a collared shirt at a collaborative table, might be added. Um, some of the questions that popped into my head while I was doing research on this particular topic is why is access to clean water now a luxury in a state as rich as Texas? How do we expose and challenge water privatization before it's too late, especially here in the city of Beaumont? How do we expose and challenge water privatization before it's too late? Again, like I said, our reference sources comes from Texas Living Water Project. UCS is also one of the references that I use. Water and Environmental Justice, that's UCS.org. And Circle of Blue, uh, their global water control. Before we wrap up
Yeah,
this
Chris. Well,
particular topic,
to enlighten us on this before you do that,
yes.
before you wrap it up. You just said uh, you just made statements about how Beaumont Jefferson County has positioned itself. Uh, Based on its current positioning, what does it stand to lose? Uh, if not looking at desalination and uh, that particular processing, and overall, I mean, if Beaumont just says, "Well, we're just going to sit here and wait and see what the state does," I mean, it is how would that profit Beaumont, or where would Jefferson County be at that point?
Well, if the city of Beaumont waits on the state of Texas to, or any other private company to develop around us to desalinate water, we're going to end up paying for that water to put it or introduce it into the current system that we use to process our water, right? So
Mm-hmm.
currently, we have a processing system, or a system for processing to make potable water drinkable. And then in that process, we, treat the waste and send it back to the river, allegedly. So if we were to include a desalinization process or plant or facility, it will take water from the nature's river, lower nature's river, because the upper nature's still has fresh water, right? Because most that runs down. But we're at a spot, almost like a sweet spot here in Beaumont, where we get um, fresh water from the northern portion of the river, and we will, with desalinization on the municipal side, be able to take that water from the nature's river on the lower side. That's also an issue of climate, that has an issue of climate change with rising sea level. Everybody knows that seawater is salty. The Gulf is salty here. But um, introducing the desalinization process or facility to what we already have will secure the city of Beaumont to continue to sell potable, drinkable water to residents, municipalities, and industries that need it. Now, the wastewater that comes from desalinization, like you mentioned, Perry, can go be sold to industries that use brine, salt brine, to for their processes, whether it's to scrape the walls of an old cavern, saltwater dome, or whatever.
Right.
That resource now becomes available to the city of Beaumont to at least consider for revenues, and it doesn't have to necessarily stay in the water department, right? So now you have a bolstering water department that also gives the city's system and citizens a guarantee almost that they can always count on potable and drinkable water into the system, being introduced into the system. Now, some people are probably like, what? What are you talking about? Salt water. If it is introduced into the system currently without it being treated, it will damage the system, the current system. And that's the entire treatment process and the system until we open it in our faucets or at the water fountain at school, right? It Desalinization doesn't change the taste of your water. Desalinization gives you more water to process so that you can enjoy that taste that some people like here in Southeast Texas or even in Beaumont, right? So that's one of the I guess seriousness issues. One of the serious issues that we have when it comes to the state desalinating or going through a desal process before the city of Beaumont gets to it. Mind you, I'm not sure what Port Arthur does or any other city that's around us, but I do know that there are some small municipalities and townships around us that receives their water from the city of Beaumont. And if we're going to continue to have um, a guaranteed feedstock of water, desalinization on the municipal side, from the municipal side, has to happen in the city of Beaumont before um, private developers come into our area and do it for us. And I think that's sort of kind of um, what is a major issue for uh, for most Texans, let alone here in the city of Beaumont. And I see like, excuse me, I see Perry got kicked off again. I'm surprised because I did see it says network connection or something just a second ago. But um, I definitely, if anybody has any questions about that, please feel free to comment in the chat. Let it be known that you don't understand, please, so that we can have this discussion about a life-saving process that's needed for guarantee and security here in the city of Beaumont, and even possibly, like Perry mentioned, in Jefferson County. Um, Now, our local topic for the evening. Um, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, so um, don't put them in the aisle because I'm coming. I'm 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 not gonna be apologetic about this particular topic because it needs to be talked about. It needs to be this discussion needs to be had. So scoot in a little closer if you can. Our title for this particular topic is self-inflicted shackles. What happens when the oppression isn't just systematic or systemic. It's cultural. A real conversation on internalized trauma, toxic community culture, and the fear we project on each other. What we're going to dig into in this particular topic is hopefully talk about not let's talk not about white supremacy, not about the system, but we definitely want to talk about what do we do to each other when we stop believing in each other. From glorifying trauma to rejecting accountability to fearing our own people more than the police, we got some truths to unpack. Raw talking points I would love for you to have at your own round table in our own communities on why we still glamorize pain, violence, and struggle. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to learn. Nobody wants peace. Is that real or learned? The crisis of pride, community upkeep, and why we're afraid of our own streets. Why some black folks never feel safe around other black folks, and why that's dangerous. Our roundtable question for this particular topic is: are we truly free or just fighting for the right to self destruct on our own terms? Our seeds of solutions is build a cultural reclamation campaign to replace street cred with community building. Create multi-generational dialogue sessions between elders and youth. There we go again, trying to bridge those intergenerational gaps. Launch community rehab efforts to clean up neighborhoods without waiting for city budgets to include you. Our sources come from American Psychology Association. Again, apa.org is their website. A wealth of information when it comes to self hate, when it comes to, you know, um, advocacy on the level of, um, understanding psychology and not just the professional, not how it comes off in a professional way. Check out that website, y'all. I'm telling you, it was a wealth of knowledge and information when I went to it for this particular topic. Again, that's apa.org, American Psychological Association. Also, National African American Reparations Commission, which is reparations. .com.org. That's reparations, COMM.org. There too is a lot of information, including the reparations plan. I would definitely ask you all to check out their reparations plan. See what it says. See if you align. See if you agree. Um, and if not, reach out to them. There's a newsletter there, and ways for you to communicate your opinions. So check that out. Um, Again, for my co-host, are we truly free, or just fighting for the right to self-destruct on our own terms? Go ahead, big bro. And I thought I saw Tony. I don't know if he want to hop in on that question too.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I think that's an interesting question. I mean, we definitely have the right to self-destruct on our own terms. Uh, but I think we find ourselves now, uh, yeah, in this self-destructive cycle because, as I've said, even from the time we were born, we're dealing with politics, some system of control, some system is informing us, but now we find ourselves as adults now saying, okay, well, you are the politics, and so how can I create or manage these politics when all I've ever been told was that politics told me what to do, and or it governed me. And so now that I have to govern for myself, you find there's a lot of disparity between who should know, who we're expecting to know. I mean, it be as they say, it all comes out in the wash. And so now we're at this point. Not only do we have to govern, but I think we have to reimagine because everything that our foundations and principles of govern were on has been eroded. And not to say that we can't reconstitute them, uh, but the willingness, it has to be there. And so I think we also finding out that we're now having a younger generation who are saying, "I don't want it, but I'm not willing to to do what it takes to get what I want." So now we're having to educate, we're having to learn, and we're and also having to at some point uh put to rest some of as they used to say back in the day, things that we should have nipped in the bud. We're finding out that a whole lot of things that did not get nipped have now grown full term, and so now
Yes.
we're having to deal with another, a more pronounced level of destruction because now you don't have adolescents in terms of just being able to put hands on you to to now we I mean we're now having generations of black men who find it comfortable not to be the breadwinners or the leaders of their home. They are quite comfortable with that. So how do you build a community around that mindset?
I
As
totally
well
agree.
as a mindset of some women who will say, "I don't need a man." Somebody needs something in this community to work.
I totally agree.
You know.
I totally agree. I don't see any comments on this particular topic as of yet, but I definitely want to say um, you made some really hitting points, and I want to give a little context about this. Um, this was just a general about this particular topic. This was just general conversation that started out about things that we were noticing in a family or in within our group. And so the question came about, or why is it that we claim uh, access to so much trauma? Why we sort of kind of exploit the trauma, use it, so to speak, as a crutch, right? And I had to think about it. I was like, damn, you might be right. But before I responded, I really had to think deep about trauma, first off, right? And then how trauma is introduced to people, right? And so, I, you know, I, some of it, yes, is self inflicted, but it's self inflicted because most of us don't know where the trauma or the root of the trauma comes from, right? And so we get into what most of us really are scared to say out loud in particular. Um, and like I said, some in our family chat said, I don't fear nobody like I fear my own race or my own people. Think about that. And I had to respond. Um, you fear what you've been trained to misunderstand or trained to fear. Um, you know, we're scared of our youth. Most of us, some of us rather, are scared of our youth because we aren't invested in them. We don't have a relationship with them. And even some of those that do have relationship with them, we are more offset than in together. You know, um, we avoid the elders because too many of them stop showing up or only show up to judge, right? Or uh, have they pick their favorites. And mind you, we're in the midst of that group of favorites you're picking, right? Um, we praise the trauma. Some people praise trauma.
Hmm. Right.
We shame the healing, which is crazy. Um, and we call it culture when it actually collapsed. Um, I listen to a lot of people say, "I got a therapist. I got a therapist. I got a therapist." Or you need therapy. You need therapy. You need therapy. And especially in the black community, for many of us, especially older blacks, nobody about to go to no therapy. They don't know what that is. They they're used to going to their pastor and speaking to their pastor, and they're used to telling it like a TI is. It's like my mom used to say, without holding anything back and be able to still have those hard conversations that many of us now have issues being forthcoming about. Like, let's say the plantation house in Louisiana. Me personally, burn it down. I'm glad the ancestors answered that call because for me, as a descendant, a bloodline descendant of some of Louisiana's finest founders, whether they were listed as native, mulatto, Negro, Creole, white, black, whatever. I know that 160 years ago, when we owned property, and that civil war era came through, they removed many property owners that just so happen to be native, or black or mulatto, especially with the one drop rule, because um, you were not allowed to own property under U.S. law or um, Confederate law. And so you stripped legacy, you stripped lineage, you stripped wealth from not only my people and bloodline, but you also perpetuated that cycle to continue to remove individuals from their property and their legacies and their bloodlines. So don't get mad when we don't cry over a plantation mansion when it burns down and they lost their property. When, like I said, my ancestors had acres, had big houses, had sharecroppers, and their house was burned to the ground. But we had a staple in Louisiana to show you, just like many of these statues, to continue to perpetuate trauma and push trauma from the elders on down to the newborn. I do want to say, over the neighborhoods we've lost, we didn't hear nobody cry or say we need to rebuild. When those same plantations were split into communities and neighborhoods like we have right now, many of those plantations that were split and sold off to some of their offspring. I'm sorry, I live in Beaumont, Texas, the south end of Beaumont, Texas, and a bloodline relative, of course, long before me, founded Santa Ana, Texas. But we have to pay for property in Beaumont. My grandfather was a great grandfather, was a mogul in Jennings, Louisiana, and we still have to fight to keep our property in these spaces. Make that make sense. But you want us to drop our head and feel some particular way when a plantation that should have been wiped off the map a long time ago, and you boastfully say, "Oh, it's the last antebellum." Anything antebellum we hear, we know, especially as people of color, know that that is always slave attached. So miss us in our communities with that, and find out the real root to our trauma, especially if you, as a black person, or you, as a person of color, or a friend to a person of color, doesn't understand the trauma that is passed on from generation to generation, and or the trauma that's even considered to be in our blood. Some of the things that I do consider: why do we protect the pain and silence the truth? How do we restore the village when nobody remembers who built it? Again, you do not get criticized. We do not get to criticize the youth when we ain't left nothing but trauma and lectures. We do not get to mourn the elders when we sit silent while their lessons are being erased. We do not fear the hood, you fear your own reflection. And I'm not protecting that mindset anymore. Not in my bloodline, not on my block. Stop allowing um, this whitewash mindset to control you and allow you to be afraid of your own in your own community. Perry, give us something to wrap up for the rest of the week, man.
Uh, like I say, I always stay with one of those that is always true. We are the change that we are looking for. And, the more we embrace that, the more we see ourselves as change agents, the more we can be comfortable with making changes. So start with that. Start with change. Start with changing yourself. Yeah. I mean, you can't change. You can't change anything if you're not willing to be changed. So let's start with making those small incremental modifications and improvements that we can use to help become those agents of change that we desire.
I totally agree, especially to be agent of change. Tonight was never about being comfortable. It was it was about confrontation, confronting who's hurting us and who's helping them by staying silent. If you said, I don't do politics and still wonder why your child don't respect your voice, now you know. You ain't taught them the stakes. And now they're learning survival from pain, not from principle. We keep saying the youth are lost, and they aren't. They're watching us fumble legacy, ignore truth, and excuse silence. And they don't want to inherit it, none of that. They don't want none of that to be passed down into their next bloodline. Killing the generational curses of what people, of my elders would always say. You ready to change that? Or are you going to keep pretending this is not your fight? The mic is open, the table is hot. Let's stop surviving and start building. And as always, stay prayed up, stay prayed up, stay prayed up. Thanks again for watching. Y'all have a good night. God bless.